Hello and welcome back to yet another Stop the Clock episode. And I lose track, but I think we're on 10. We are
And
on our 10th episode. So
double
kind
digits.
of small milestone, 10th episode. We're here in the NFL season where we only have one game left. And we're on the weekend before, the weekend eve of the Super Bowl.
It's Pro
Um,
Bowl.
it's honestly the more important weekend because we have the Pro Bowl this weekend, and we'll get more into the Pro Bowl at the end of this podcast when we talk just more about it. But we're going to actually start, since we don't really have any games to break down or we don't have any games to really analyze, because that's later in the week when we could actually talk about the Super Bowl. Let's start with some fun little player comparisons. And I'll let you go first, Sam, with two players that you want to compare, and maybe one that's kind of a hot topic right now.
Yeah, so I think we already talked about this one earlier this season, but it kind of got brought up between us a couple days ago. So let's just keep it simple. It's last year's draft, Burrow and Herbert, and we both have strong feelings about this. And I think this is my take on Burrow versus Herbert. I think when you look at both quarterbacks and it's like, who do you want? Like, what's better? I think Herbert outdoes Burrow in almost every category. I think just the talent, the mobility, like his arm talent, his ability to fit the ball into tight spaces, the way he can throw the ball down the field, his mobility. He showcased that a lot this year. His size, all of that. I'm going to take Herbert. However, when it's all said and done, I think Burrow is going to go down as the better player and as the more I think he's just going to be better all time when you look back at it. I think he'll win more rings. I think he'll win more games. I just think he's more – I'm not going to say more of a winner because Justin Herbert's definitely a winner and can win you games. But I think all time, I think Burrow's going to get to the playoffs more. He's going to play better in the playoffs. So give me Joe Burrow.
So we're going to define both of their careers by their rings because personally, I feel like – and we talked about this earlier, is like, look, obviously I think at the end of the day, Burrow will probably have more rings than Herbert. Maybe we have a Tom Brady, Peyton Manning situation where maybe Herbert wins the more MVPs. But I look at Herbert and just the talent that he has and what he's able to do already in his second year. And you could say the same with Burrow. He's made some great throws, but Herbert's out of this world with some of the throws he's already made in his second year. I mean, you point to the example of the 75-yard throw he had against the Giants, where he just absolutely – or 65-yard. I don't know.
I think it was like 65, but like standing. Like it was –
exactly,
or being
standing
hit.
65 from basically their 35 to – or, I mean, their 40 to –
I don't know. We all know the one they're talking about versus the Giants.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, unbelievable throw. And to do that and there's just so many more examples of what Burrow is able to do with his pure talent. And I'm not saying that Burrow isn't talented, but if I'm looking at a franchise, and you could say Burrow's the winner, but I mean, it's kind of hard to pass up on a guy like Herbert. He has a nice frame. He stands at 6'6", 237. He's a big guy, and he can throw the ball really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm starting a team, I am going to take Herbert. Like you just said, the intangibles and the measurables and the statistics, they're out of this world. But when I look at it, I see two teams in the Chargers and the Bengals. And I know you're going to get on me because I'm talking about the teams and not the players, but just I have a point here. I think when you look at the two teams, they're very eerily similar. Decent defenses, young, what is it? I think Zach Taylor was in his third year. Brandon Staley was in his first. Young head coaches. The only two teams with two 1,000-yard receivers. They both have elite running backs in Eckler and Mixon. And Herbert definitely has a better offensive line. So very similar situations for both quarterbacks, and you can't be like, oh, well, this guy is this and this guy is it. They are in very similar situations, and what I see here is Burrow was able to make the more out of his situation. That's why I like his winning ability, his clutch ability more than Herbert, and that's why I think he'll be better in the long run. If you look at these two teams, Justin Herbert didn't make the playoffs, and Joe Burrow is now sitting here winning his division in his first 4 years as a starter and taking his team to the Super Bowl in his second year already in virtually, I'm not going to say identical systems, but pretty similar structure around both guys.
I think it's a fair argument to say, when you compare the two teams and you say, look, Burrow and Herbert, they're in similar situations, the coaching staff, the players around them, what they have. But I think you look, and the big takeaway is Herbert in every single one of his last 5 games or whatever he played, and you could look at the Raiders game specifically, he played his ass off, right? He threw for 383, three touchdowns and 1 interception, had a quarterback rate of 80.4. Like, he was playing phenomenal. At the end of the day, it wasn't even him who lost the game. So that's kind of where I go to the whole team thing, where it's like, look, I get it. Burrow's in the situation. He's in the Super Bowl, and he's surpassed every expectation that they had this year. But it's not like Herbert is losing these games. It's more, I mean, the Chargers are notorious for blowing games and blowing leads. So it's like he's kind of been put in that situation where he's put so much into the game, but at the end of the day, they still fall up this short of, winning a game.
Yeah, and the Raiders game, this is not to knock anything off of Justin Herbert, but at the same time, they only had 14 points going into the fourth quarter. Like, it's not like you can say, like, hey, it was all in their defense, because it wasn't, and obviously their head coach made some questionable decisions. But statistically, yes, I think Herbert is a lot better, but I just have one question is, how did Justin Herbert play last week? Or the week before? Or the week before that? Oh, wait, he wasn't even in the playoffs. And this is my point. I still think when I look at the two quarterbacks, I want the quarterback that's going to win me the most games. And I think that is Joe Burrow.
I agree, but I think when we look at it, the Bengals don't got to play Kansas City twice a year, and they did this year, and they beat them both times. They beat them both times. I get that, but I don't know. I think, and I get your point, Burrow. He's obviously in the Super Bowl and all, but I don't think you can look at the teams and anything around it. I think you just look at the pure player of it and what they've been able to do. And yeah, Burrow, I mean, fantastic story and a winner in every way. There's no gain around that, but I mean, Herbert is going to be that guy for the next 10, 12 years. And I think, yes, Burrow might end up with the more rings on his finger, but I think I would look at Herbert at both of their end careers and be like, yeah, he was the better quarterback.
And this brings me to another point that we discussed, I guess, off recording, which is it's eerily similar when you look at just, and obviously we're projecting, this is all assumption, but like if you look at Brady and Manning or Brady and Rodgers or something like that, I think there's no question that Tom Brady is not the most talented quarterback in this league, but he will go down as the greatest of all time because of what he was able to do in his career. Like if you look at Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, to start a team, I would take Aaron Rodgers actually, I'm not going to say I would take Aaron Rodgers, but I think talent-wise, I would take Aaron Rodgers. And that's the same way I feel about this argument is that talent-wise, I'm going to take Justin Herbert, but in the long run, I'm going to take Joe Burrow because of what I think he'll be able to do in his career.
Yeah, and that makes sense, but I mean, to each his own, right? I mean, it's really, you can go 1A, 1B at the end of the day because both are phenomenal quarterbacks, and it's crazy that we're already talking 10 years in the future when both are only in their second year, and Joe Burrow's only playing his true first year. Both are fantastic quarterbacks. We'll see what Burrow obviously does. I mean, maybe if he wins next Sunday, maybe it's a different discussion that we're having, especially if he has a great game. But yeah, I think both quarterbacks phenomenal. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, at the end of the day, both those teams nailed their selections.
Moving on, I think we got one more player comparison. We'll go into more some, just stuff that's happened around the league. I think one that's very interesting because both guys are very dominant defensively, and one actually tied the sack record this year. Sucked to see that he came up basically a sack short of, or even half a sack short of getting it. And let's talk about Myles Garrett and TJ Watt because these are both players who I think we both agree are top edge rushers in the league, if not the number one and number two edge rushers in the league, especially after TJ Watt season. And then also people forget that Myles Garrett still had 16 sacks this year. But Sam, start us off with who would you take, or who do you think's better?
God, it's so tough, but I think versatility, I think TJ Watt's a little more versatile. I think he has a little more in his bag, and that's not to take anything away from Myles Garrett. We all know what he can do, but I just think when you need that big play, that clutch moment, I think we've seen TJ Watt do it time and time again. Hell, he's even dropped back into coverage and had some plays there. So I think you can move him around a little more than Myles Garrett. And then with Myles Garrett, on the other hand, I'd say I would take Myles Garrett in the run game. I think he's a much better run defender than TJ Watt. But overall, when I'm looking at which player I want for my football team, I'm going to take TJ Watt. Also, this is something that kind of gets overlooked. I think he's more of a vocal leader the Myles Garrett. And granted, that's easier for us to say just like watching them from our TVs, but I just see him getting fired up more and him really commanding that defense a bit more than Myles Garrett does. So I'm going to take TJ Watt.
Yeah, I think we're going to disagree again.
Oh, wow.
I really like Myles Garrett, and nothing to take away from what TJ Watt has done this season and the remarkable career that he's already had. And it's crazy he's so young, and all these players are so young. But yes, he had his 22.5 sacks. But when I look at Myles Garrett, and like you mentioned, you notice that there's this fire inside of TJ Watt every time you see him play, and you could maybe thank his bigger brother JJ Watt for that attribute. But I mean, you look at Myles Garrett, and this dude is just like, he comes off the line and you just fear. I mean, he steps on the field and you fear him. Not that you don't with TJ Watt, but just the size that he comes at, 6'4", 272, basically all muscle. And he steps on the field and you're like, wow, this dude is insane. And we also have to realize that they play a little bit of different positions, right? Myles Garrett is more of a defensive end. They're obviously in two different systems. And and Watt's more of an outside linebacker, so he does get the ability to drop more in coverage. So I know this argument seems kind of crazy since they both play two different positions, but I would still take Garrett just because of the pure size and destruction he can cause, and Tomas Rudolph.
Yeah, I just think that the big playability for TJ Watt is a little more there. I think he was second, or he was in top 3 for forced fumbles this year. I just think he gets to the ball a little more. I know you're looking that up as I speak, but I'm pretty TJ. I think Myles Garrett only had 1 forced fumble this year. I think TJ Watt was up there with like 5 or 6. So I think when you need a big play, I'm going to count on TJ Watt just a little bit more. And granted, maybe you could say that's the system. You also have Cam Hayward there who provides a lot of interior pressure, but I just think the big playability of TJ Watt is there. The stats back it up. Of course, he tied the sack record. He had all those forced fumbles, so I'm gonna still stick with TJ Watt.
Fair enough. I think like these past and it's kind of hard with comparisons, especially with players this caliber. And like we just talked with Herbert and Burrow, and then we talked with Watt and Garrett. I mean, these are all dudes that you'd want on your team. I mean, they're all guys that you would want on your team, regardless of what position they play or whatever. To kind of segue into some of the more, I guess, new stuff, I wanted to talk about something because obviously it happened this weekend. And the Washington football team got themselves a whole rebrand, if we want to call it that.
The Commanders.
The Commanders. And it's #TakeTheCommand. So I literally wrote Commanders laugh my ass off because I think this is I mean, to spend a year to think of something for a year, and then you come up with the Commanders, and not only that you just come up with the Commanders, but not even to really have a logo besides adding lines in between the W's. How worse could the Washington franchise get?
Yeah, I think let's just look at the whole rebrand. I think I'm not a huge fan of Commanders, but I'm not that pissed off about it. I mean, when you look at the rest of the DC sports teams, it kind of fits in. Of course, Nationals, Capitals, Commanders, like it could work. I like the uniforms. I actually really do. We saw that the helmet rule is finally going to be abolished, which is a good thing because we saw they had the 2 different color helmets. Maybe it's a little lazy. I would have liked maybe like Red Wings or Red Tails. I think maybe playing off of that red from the Redskins that we had earlier. I thought that could have been kind of cool. But I think the biggest thing that pisses me off that you just talked about was there's no like logo or anything like that. It's just a W, which I think is kind of lame. Like, really, you took all this time to like come off with, I'm not going to say a half-ass name, but like an okay name, and you can't even give us a logo. And it's not like something weird that doesn't really have a look. Like for the Packers or the Browns, it's like, what is that? Like, I get the Browns have a dog because the dog pound, and the Packers don't even have anything, but it's a Commander. You could do like a dude saluting or something like that. Like, give us something here. Don't just give us the W. So if I'm going to give this whole rebrand a grade, I would say I'm going to give it like a C+, B-. Like, it was all right. I wasn't extremely disappointed. It was kind of what I expected. I just wish that they gave us a logo.
Yeah, I'd give it a C+. I think that's a fair. It wasn't awful. I think the Red Tails would have definitely been cool. I was kind of hoping it was the Red Tails just because I know that there was history behind it, and it was like one of the first African American like pilot groups in the Air Force, and so that would have been kind of cool. And
But it's damn
PR.
sniper, so
Definitely would have helped the PR.
Yeah.
But I think this kind of just symbolizes the whole mess that Washington is in. I mean, they have all the front office stuff with all those cases that are going on with Dan Snyder, and then they have the football team itself, which was supposed to be very promising this year, right? Everyone came into this season, they're like, man, this Washington defense is going to be a problem. And then they come in and
Chase Young got hurt, and then the secondary just really did not play up to par.
But that's what I mean. I mean, Chase Young went down, but you still have a bunch of these other first-round guys that you've spent time to develop, and then you really come out flat. But I mean, we're just talking about the logo. We're talking about the team name. So yeah, I'd give it a C+. Like you mentioned, I think a logo would have maybe made it just a little better. But yeah,
definitely. All right, so let's get into some head coaches real quick. So we have and we talked about a few. We talked about already the Broncos. They got Nathaniel Hackett, and the Colts, or excuse me, the Bears hired Colts OC Matt Eberflus. Okay, sorry, that's a complicated name. So just a quick recap. We had the Giants hiring the Bills offensive coordinator, Brian Daboll. The Jags hired former Eagles head coach, Doug Peterson. The Raiders got Patriots offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels. The Vikings, once the Super Bowl is over, will hire Kevin O'Connell, the offensive coordinator for the Rams. And the Dolphins announced today that they are hiring Mike McDaniels, the offensive coordinator of the 49ers. So which head coaching hire stands out to you the most?
Well, I think we talked about it on a recent podcast or a podcast before. I don't remember exactly, but I really actually do like the Bears hiring of Matt Eberflus. They definitely could have gone in the offensive direction. But I think one thing that we brought up last time when we talked about coaches was the culture change. Like, what does the coach bring besides just being able to call plays and bring in personnel? It's really what they bring to the culture. And I think Matt Eberflus does that, right? He's not only a fantastic defensive coach who in the past 4 seasons under Frank Reich has produced a top 10 defense in 3 of those 4 seasons, including this year. But he also is a dude who expects everything from his players. And that's the type of guy that you want. We saw that with a Robert Saleh when he went to the Jets. Obviously, it didn't turn out as great in the beginning. Maybe he'll turn it around.
I think there's still hope for Robert Saleh.
Exactly, and there's still hope. But you want a guy like that who can kind of lead a change and not just kind of sit there and, let me like scheme and call all these plays, because that's more of a coordinator's job, but, not taking away from the head coach. And I think he has the perfect chance to do this. I mean, he has a young quarterback in Justin Fields who's very promising, right? Maybe he didn't have such a great rookie campaign, but what rookie quarterback did besides Mac Jones? And even at that extent, Mac Jones wasn't amazing. It was just he was with.
Yeah, to be honest, Derek Carr should have gone over him to the Pro Bowl. But.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm gonna go with the Matt Eberflus. I think they're getting the quarterbacks coach from the Packers, I believe.
Luke Getsy. I really like that hire.
Dude just had Aaron Rodgers, so I think if he has Aaron Rodgers, maybe he could do some stuff with Justin Fields. So I think that's the one hiring that I've looked at him and like, yeah, that's a strong hiring for the team.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, I think when you hear like what general managers and teams are looking for in coaches, first and foremost, and that's leadership. And I think Eberflus definitely brings that to the Bears. Aside from Nathaniel Hackett, because that definitely sounds kind of stands out to me for obvious reasons. I think one that stands out to me is Doug Peterson being hired by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that was a very interesting hiring. I mean, especially because of the way it went down. Like, a lot of people believed it was going to be Byron Leftwich. Like, it was kind of already announced. It's like, Byron Leftwich, former Jags player, former first-round pick. They're very familiar with him. He's done very good stuff in Tampa Bay. And there's a lot of people that were a little upset that, like, why isn't this? And, of course, it's a huge issue right now with minority head coaches being hired. We only have one right now, which is just awful. But setting that aside, the guy that they did end up getting is Doug Peterson. And I actually do like the hire because Doug Peterson, I think, with the one exception of his last year in Philadelphia, he did a phenomenal job. I mean, we all know how he was able to develop Carson Wentz early on, and maybe that was a little bit of Frank Wright as well. But Doug Peterson was the head coach there. Obviously, he was part of that. They're hoping he can replicate that with Trevor Lawrence. And like you alluded to earlier, Doug Peterson knows how to win. He's a Super Bowl winning head coach in this league, and it wasn't like that long ago either, only 2017. So I think this could be a definite culture change for Jacksonville. I think the team right now in the need of the most culture change coming off of the disaster that was Urban Meyer. So I definitely like Doug Peterson. We all know he can be a leader, and hopefully for them, he can take Trevor Lawrence towards that upward trajectory.
Yeah, and I think and to touch on what you earlier said about Brian Leftwich, I think what we've learned in recent days or in the past week of why he pulled out was actually because of the Jags general manager Trent Baalke. I think I'm saying his name right. And there was just this tension between them. I mean, it seemed that everybody else in the Jags organization loved Byron Leftwich.
Yeah.
He's a Super Bowl winner. The Bucs offense for recent years has been pretty successful.
I mean, even without Tom Brady, Jameis Winston was a 5,000-yard
pass.
passer.
I mean, he still had 5,000. Yeah, exactly. 30 interceptions. But but I think a big reason was because the Jaguars general manager and Trent Baalke, there wasn't this fit, and he kind of expected more of a yes person. And we'll get into that later, maybe with the Dolphins job. But like you said, I think this isn't a terrible hire when you get a Super Bowl winner. Obviously, he took Nick Foles to go win the Super Bowl, right? He didn't even have his MVP candidate that year in Carson Wentz, who tore his ACL late in the season. I think this is good for Trevor Lawrence. I think he gets a guy that we've seen that can really develop a quarterback. Obviously, Wentz, he was shaky, and then Doug Peterson kind of helped him get on his feet and was almost an MVP. So I think this is a perfect chance for Lawrence to develop. I don't know how great it'll be for the overall team and really the direction that the Jaguars are going to go, because they still have a lot of questions offensively. They in desperate need of any sort of offensive line. How they might even go first to overall pick with an offensive line.
Yeah, Evan Neal.
Yeah, they're that desperate. But I would agree. I think it's a solid hire. But I do want to flip the script and go to one that had just happened today, and that's the Dolphins. The Dolphins hiring the 49ers offense coordinator, I believe his name was
Mike McDaniels.
Mike McDaniels. We talked about this because I think that there's a whole different podcast you could have with Brian Flores, but I'm not a huge fan of the hiring. I think I said this because I think it's going to be tough for anybody who got this job next after Brian Flores for the Miami Dolphins. I think whether it was Kellen Moore or am I blanking on his name? What's his name? You just said it. His name?
Who's this? Byron Leftwich?
The OC.
For who? Oh, Mike McDaniels?
Mike McDaniels, yeah. I think it was going to be tough for either one, Kellen Moore or Mike McDaniels, to really come into this job after everything that has happened with Brian Flores and really have a tough time for the team to be like, man, we really love Flores, and now we got this other guy coming in. It's like, yeah, I mean, and no blame on him, because the dude's a genius. I mean, right, he had the 49ers the 7th best offense in terms of yards per game, and he had an all-pro receiver in Deebo Samuel this year. So he was fantastic, but here we go again with the culture thing.
Yeah, because the first report when Brian Flores got fired was like, oh, there were rifts between him and Tua, and clearly, as this has come out, the one true thing is this clearly wasn't the case. He definitely did not have rifts with the players. He had rifts with the owners and the general manager and the owners. So I agree. I think this is tough. I mean, I don't know a lot about Mike McDaniels, what kind of leader he is, and especially will he be able to replicate what this 49ers offense is able to do. I mean, they have a lot of key pieces that makes him tick, and I think the number one is Kyle Shanahan. I mean, it's his system. It's not Mike McDaniel's system. So I'm very interested to see what portions of that he can take. I think he can be successful. I mean, the Miami Dolphins were already using Jalen Waddle a lot in the backfield with Brian Flores, so I'd be interesting to see how he gets used. But granted, you don't have Trent Williams in Miami. You don't have George Kittle in Miami. You definitely don't have Deebo in Miami. So I don't know. I think they're definitely hoping you can sort of replicate what Kyle Shanahan has done for the 49ers, but I agree that it's definitely going to be a tough spot to sort of come into. And however, there are 2 remaining head coaching vacancies still open, the Texans and the Saints. And the Texans still have Brian Flores actually on their final 3, I guess, along with Josh McCown, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I think Brian Flores to the Texans would be a fantastic hire. I mean, especially right now with everything going on, I think that would send a definite message to the league and taking out all the politics of it, we saw what he was able to do with Miami and how impoverished they were before he got there and how he was really able to turn them around. And I think hiring Brian Flores, we've seen all the connections that he's had to Deshaun Watson. Is this something that could help maybe keep Deshaun Watson in Houston? That's a definite possibility that I haven't really seen talked about. So I think the Texans, I think they should be bold here and go get Brian Flores.
Oh, without a doubt. I think this would be a huge thing to help Brian Flores. For Deshaun Watson to stay in Houston. Obviously, he has to get the whole legal stuff figured out. But, yeah, I mean, if that's all cleared up, I mean, man, I don't see why he wouldn't stay. But I think the Texans' job would be perfect for Brian Flores. I think he can really change the culture up there. Once again, it's a whole culture thing. They've been a disaster. I mean, it's a very they don't even have fans show up to their games.
Yeah, but it's weird because they used to be good, but then Bill O'Brien just like crashed them entirely. And like even when they were good, their culture wasn't good. So, and we're a big fan of culture changes on this podcast.
We are a big fan of culture changes. I personally believe if you're going to be a head coach, you got to be a lot more of a culture dude than just let me tell you.
It's about the leadership. It really is.
Exactly. And just to go back to the Dolphins thing real quick, I wonder because I know that Brian Flores had mentioned this after he's fired that the owner or the general manager of the Dolphins really wanted more of a yes man. So I wonder if they just asked a bunch of yes or no questions to McDaniels, and if he answered all yes, and that's why they hired him. But
yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of shady stuff that will definitely be hopefully unveiled within the coming weeks. But let's talk about a bad man. A man called Aaron Rodgers. Want to touch on him? Definitely going to be a hot topic coming up. So a lot of reports, it's been the Broncos. That's been the presumed number one team. It was funny before all. So originally, I actually really liked the prospect of, like, I thought it was a definite possibility that Aaron Rodgers could go to the Titans. I thought, hey, if they move some stuff around with their cap space, because I think that's one of the biggest things that's keeping them from pulling that trigger is the cap space that the Titans have right now. They're just not there, but I think he would fit perfectly, and I think they would be instant Super Bowl contenders with Aaron Rodgers on their team. And like everyone was freaking out. I was like, oh, he bought property in Tennessee. What does it mean? What does it mean? I'm like, let's relax. Let's see. And then the Titans just came out and said, we're sticking with Ryan Tannehill. Don't know if I agree with that, but they're paying him all this money. And I guess he did get them to the number one pick without Derrick Henry. So there is some credit to be given there, but he did kind of flop in that playoff game.
Yeah, I think the whole Aaron Rodgers thing is interesting because I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers as a person is interesting. This whole year has been the Aaron Rodgers show. I mean, it really has from start to finish. It started with, oh, is he even going to play? And then it was the whole COVID. And then, hell, he was putting his toe in on press conferences. And then, now
it was a wild ride.
He just lost, once again in the playoffs. I don't honestly know what's going to happen. I think it's very interesting. I think Denver's obviously the top place that he's probably going to end up, right? I mean, like you've mentioned in previous podcasts, and you're a big fan of that team. Is when they got such a young roster, a lot of elite talent on that, and so many young guys who are ready to shine. And all they need is that honestly that quarterback. They got Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator from Green Bay, and it's like, how can you not go there, right?
They have everything. They have the roster. They have the coach that you like. They also brought in tight ends coach to be the offensive coordinator. They have a complete roster. You're in Colorado. It's beautiful. Your girlfriend literally lives in Boulder. They also have the cap space to pay him and the draft picks to appease Green Bay. So, I don't know. Granted, Green Bay did come out and said that they're all on the same page in the organization, at least not Aaron Rodgers, but everyone in the organization is on the same page that Aaron Rodgers will be coming back. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think he's coming to Denver, but definitely interesting to watch.
And the other thing is, like, I guess, like, if he didn't want to go, it's like, does he want to play Mahomes twice a year? Does he want to play Herbert twice a year? Does he want to play Carr twice a year? I think it'll be very interesting. I think the two superstars out of Green Bay is going to be interesting. Where does Devontae end up? Obviously, I know he mentioned he wants Devontae to come with him wherever he goes. I think if he goes to the Broncos,
I don't know if
really see that happening. Just
unless maybe Judy or Patrick gets moved. I don't think so.
Unless Judy or Patrick gets moved, and then you just need a lot more, and then there's money, and then he's saying he wants $30 million a year. I mean, that's a crazy amount for
the Broncos can pay him. I mean,
then you have to pay him and then Rodgers. I mean, if you got the cap space for both of that, it's like, I mean, do it.
But
but it's a lot of money. But I think we'll end it off.
I have a question, Jude. You don't need to answer, but I just have a question. Guess what I did today?
What did you do today?
Not watch the Pro Bowl, because I did not watch the Pro Bowl today.
Well, today I did watch the Pro Bowl. I didn't really watch it. It was kind of just on in the background. I was doing stuff, and I was like, all right, let me just.
Exactly.
I'm only watching for Javon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. So
Actually, what I did, I mean, as you know, we live in LA. The Super Bowl's coming to LA, so I went to the Super Bowl experience, which is actually really fun. I definitely recommend if you want to go to the Super Bowl experience. It's only $20 a person. A lot of fun stuff, a lot of cool games, and then a lot of fun memorabilia there. They had like jerseys from every team. They had the 2020 class of Hall of Famers. They had all their busts there. They had a lot of cool stuff. They have guys that were signing stuff there. I think when I was there, in the time slot I was there, it was like Joe Hayden, Amon-Ra St. Brown, my boy Garrett Bowles was there. So that was fun. And I think later in the afternoon, it was Malcolm Smith and Asante Samuel Jr. So a lot of fun stuff to do there, fun games. Definitely recommend going. Definitely more fun than watching the Pro Bowl because, oh my goodness, do we need a change.
You should be an ad guy for the NFL. That was like.
That was right.
that was on point. You're giving everything about it. I mean, man, I need to go now. I mean, after hearing what you just said, like.
Yeah, you were talking to me. You said Micah Parsons was speaking, so
Micah Parsons is going on Friday, so I think I might have to skip school and go see Micah Parsons. I think it's ideal, but I do actually want to finish on the Pro Bowl because I did catch it. I mean, you don't really watch the Pro Bowl. I mean, I don't know about other people, but I just watch it to kind of like see.
No, it was on in the background. We went and got lunch, and it was on.
Micah and Brian Anger, who obviously didn't do a single punt.
I saw Mac Jones that one play. That was by far the most fun part.
But I think there needs to be a change. And I think the biggest change, and I know, and you had some ideas, but I personally think it should be 7-on-7. I think that would make it a lot better. I think, look, the offensive linemen, they're fantastic, and they should be rewarded because they're fantastic players. But they don't need to be in the game because, honestly, they're not doing anything. I mean, yeah, you're blocking, but it's like you're barely blocking. Defensive linemen and DNs, they're not really trying to hit the quarterback. Obviously, Max Crosby had himself a day, but they're not trying to do much. So I think it should be 7-on-7, and that gives the opportunity for maybe maybe you don't even put pads on. Maybe you're just like, okay, let's go make highlight plays.
Exactly. I mean, that was, I think, the first thing that was on mine is maybe do like a one-on-ones competition. I think that would be really fun. Awesome. I think in just the whole Pro Bowl week, I think it's kind of gotten kind of stale, not just the game, but like all the stuff that they do. I mean, volleyball has kind of gotten old in my opinion. Some of the competitions they're doing. I thought the like flashiest catch thing was pretty cool, but I think some fun things I think they could add, and I'm gonna throw out some random ones for sure. I want them to bring back the furthest throw competition that they used to do. Like that would be so much fun with Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, just so you could launch it far. Low key, have them play basketball. Have them play pickup basketball. I think that would be really fun. Maybe even do a cooking competition.
So who would win?
Who's my starting five?
Starting five.
Okay, well, I think any starting five has to have Myles Garrett on it. I mean, oh my God, it has to.
I mean, he's your Giannis. I mean, he is your Giannis. You give him the ball, he's giving you 30.
Yeah. So okay, let me think. I think Mike Evans. I want some hype there with Mike Evans. I'm gonna
Mahomes at point.
I'm actually gonna put who was it? Was it Justin Herbert that played basketball?
Yeah, it was the Clippers.
I think it was Herbert. So I think I'll put Herbert out there. We got Evans. We got who else? Who's like really athletic that I could put out there?
Who's really athletic? I mean, there's a bunch of dudes.
I mean, it's the whole NFL. Let's be real.
Debo. I mean, that's like
Debo. There you go. I'll take Debo, Samuel, and George Kittle because it's the people's tight end. That's my starting five right there.
Starting five. I think I'd go. I think Mahomes would be my point guard. I think you gotta get a dude, facilitate the floor. Herbert at shooting guard without a doubt. I mean, 6'6", perfect.
You going with the quarterbacks?
Going with the quarterbacks, and then small forward. I'm definitely going like maybe Mike Evans.
No, you can't. I took Mike Evans. Don't take Actually, you did take Herbert too. Actually, no. Yeah, screw it. I took my five. You got to pick a different five.
I'll take Mahomes. Shooting guard. small forward. I'll definitely take. I don't even know. Oh, you know what? Shooting guard, I'll go like Micah. You know,
Parsons.
I
Okay.
think he could bully people. I think that's
Versatile.
Versatile. I think small forward.
Ooh, I have one. Maybe Kyle Pitts.
Ooh, you know what? Small forward. I'm going Kyle Pitts. Thank you.
I like that.
I'll call Kyle Pitts small forward. And then power forward, center, someone tall. That's tough. I think.
Mark Andrews.
Mark Andrews.
Yeah, tight ends.
Mark Andrews. I'll go the tight ends. Mark Andrews and George Kittle. Those are my
I took George Kittle, but it's okay. We can both have George Kittle. It's fine. All right. Basketball. Maybe a cooking competition. I don't know. I feel like that'd be kind of fun.
So you're really going out here. You're saying
I'm saying I am trying to help this so much.
Football idea. Why don't we just have you guys? Yeah, you know what?
I think just do better. I think there's two ways that they can make that. I think the only two ways they can make this thing the actual game better is do what you said, 7-on-7, maybe not even pads. Just I think that would be a lot better. Sorry, linemen, just not gonna. You could do one-on-ones with the linemen.
You know what? You can do the cooking show linemen.
The lineman cooking show. There you go. I like that. Or you take a page out of the MLB's book. So if you don't know, at the MLB All-Star Game, whoever wins that for their conference, that conference gets home field advantage in the World Series for that 7-game series. Obviously, the Super Bowl, it's not going to work like that. However, what the NFL did this year was they added a 17th game. You're playing one more out-of-conference game, and it's going to alternate which year is home and away. So this year, all the AFC teams got home games. Next year, all the NFC teams are going to get the extra home game. Make the Pro Bowl a battle for that extra home game. Whichever conference wins that game, wins the Pro Bowl, gets home an extra home game for the next year.
That's actually very creative. I would still stick with the 7-on-7, and I think partially because I think why the Pro Bowl isn't as successful as you could look at the NBA All-Star Game, the MLB, and maybe one thing I would do, I would definitely give the kicker some love. I think they should do like some kicking challenge, like how they have the home run derby, where they try to hit the ball the farthest. I think you should have like some kicking competition. But I think going back to the actual game itself, I think why it's so tough, especially is because like football, I mean that's a contact sport, and if you give your 100%, there's that risk of injury, and obviously this is a fun game, and you really don't want to go out there and get hurt. And so that's why I think in the NBA All-Star Game, it's a little easier because, one, it's basketball, and yeah, there's contact, but
no one's trying, and it's still entertaining.
Yeah, exactly.
And even when they are, it's hard to get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. In football, it's like if you're going full hard, someone's going to get hit, and most likely someone will get hurt if you do that. And so I think that's kind of the reason why maybe veering towards the 7-on-7, because no one's really getting hurt. You're just going out there to make flashy plays, and I think that would honestly be more enjoyable. But I love the idea of a cooking show. I think the cooking show, the offensive lineman cooking show should be number one. I mean, that should be the headliner event of the weekend.
Pro Bowl cook-off.
Also, make it a little shorter. I'm just saying, like, maybe just start on a Friday and finish on a Sunday, and not do.
Make it a weekend. I like that. I agree. Granted, at the same time, it's all about like the families too. You want to fly your family out there and do that, which I get. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed episode 10 of Stop the Clock. You'll definitely be hearing from us this week because, of course, the big game is coming up next Sunday, a week from today. It'll either be the Rams or the Bengals. We'll give all of our thoughts on that. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you have anything you want us to answer on the podcast, hit us up. ThatFootballTopic SportsBx. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and have a nice day.